it's a great way to start the conversation, to identify issues and opportunities, and then to really think about prioritizing what's really going to have a great impact on not only what we've been hammering, the customer experience, but that operational efficiency internally as well.
Welcome to RevOps Champions, a podcast designed for revenue professionals looking to advance sales and marketing initiatives through the role of RevOps within their organizations. In each episode, we feature leaders who are leveraging technology to drive operational efficiency, revenue, and improve the customer experience. Listen in and learn how to become a better RevOps leader within your own organization. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of RevOps Champions. I am very excited today to have with me the CMO at Denamico, Adam Stewart. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Brendon. It's about time you've had me on the podcast. I've been watching all of the RevOps Champion episodes, which have been fantastic, and I've been patiently waiting to join the RevOps Champions community. So it's an honor to be with you this morning.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's I've been looking forward to this as well because, as you know, you and I and the rest of the team here are all, every day we're talking about these things, and at the end of every day we realize that there are probably people out there who'd like to, hear what we're talking about. So hopefully we can, dig into some of those things today, even though, of course, there's only so much we can pack into, let's say roughly 30 minutes.
Absolutely. Let's say this is one of many, Brendon.
Yes, exactly. I look forward to that. So for those of you, watching and listening, Adam and I have been working together on a lot of this stuff and developing these things with our team for over 6 years. So we've got an incredible, and we're of course playing to everyone's strengths to try and help our clients figure this stuff out as well. So Adam, I'd like to jump right in with, how do you define RevOps? What is RevOps to you?
Right. I always like to think of RevOps, and I'll use one word: alignment. Brendon, we've talked about alignment and being a key to revenue operations. And really, it's aligning your customer-facing teams. I'll use different terms like customer-facing or frontline or go-to-market, but really we're talking about your marketing team, your sales team, your customer success or customer service teams. So those are your frontline teams, and aligning those teams around similar processes, similar systems, similar data to do some great things in terms of customer experience and operational efficiency.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, I think this is one of the consistencies, in all these folks that we've been talking with here on RevOps Champions. Alignment has absolutely been, one of the key themes. And it's as you were talking about that, I was thinking back, to 3 years ago when we did our Denamico conference, and you and Emily were talking about a lot of these things when we were still trying to figure this out.
Right.
And of course, 3 years later, there still is no real playbook to what we now call RevOps or revenue operations. But we knew from the work we were doing with our clients already then 3 years ago that, data process and technology or technology systems were the three critical components in addition to, of course, those aligned teams.
Right.
That, if we could figure these things out would be a clear competitive advantage because, again, so few businesses are doing it to the degree that is possible today, especially, with how technology has evolved, just even, of the last 6+ years that we've been working together.
Right. The evolution of revenue operations has been fun to be a part of. And we didn't really know what we were getting into. We were just responding to clients' challenges, our own challenges, and all these conversations that we were having with businesses who recognized that the way they were doing business was a bit broken. There was friction. There were pain points internally and externally. And so we started discussing different ways to identify what the actual issues were. And to your point, we started with that workshop of talking about the technology, the data, the people, and the processes. And that's a way just to simplify how you approach thinking about your revenue operations as a whole. It was a great workshop, and it really set the foundation for us at the Denamico to keep on this journey and really kind of evolve and help shape our services around revenue operations. So it's been a fun ride, and you know what? It's not set in stone, which is great too, because
absolutely. Which again, is at the core of what we, at Denamico why we continue to evolve, and what's at the core of our sort of belief system is that, things are going to change. And if you embrace that change, and of course, we're talking primarily on how technology is changing the world that we live in, and how technology is essentially changing buyer behavior, and therefore, how we and businesses across the globe have to respond to how buyer behavior is changing.
Right. And I'd even flip that. I think now it's buyer behavior is influencing the technology versus the technology pushing buyer behavior, which is really interesting. The people who are creating the technology and the platforms to have these experiences are really conscious of what people want in terms of how they're purchasing a widget or a service. Something that's a small purchase or a large purchase has completely changed. And it's driven by that customer who's saying, I want this experience online or digital or through my phone to complete a purchase that I normally would have done differently in the past. And that was, that was the case even before the pandemic, when everything kind of escalated online and more people were on the screens at home.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess it's really that sort of that symbiotic relationship between all these smart people creating the technology, who again, at the end of the day are also consumers, and they're doing a lot of work on figuring out what do consumers want today, what do consumers want tomorrow, what do consumers want, so that's all that this sort of Amazon theme that has actually come up a few times in a few past episodes too, where Jeff Bezos has this every day is day one. As soon as it's day two, we're dead, right? So unfortunately, so again, you got to be on your toes all the time. But again, if you want to embrace the changes that are happening, this is one of the ways you do it from a business perspective, especially for those of us who value the importance of customer experience. And of course, we'd argue that if any business that does not value customer experience is probably going to struggle.
Right. You're not going to be in business for long, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then, now that we've sort of defined again in our words, or in your words for today, anyhow, what RevOps is, why is the next question always, so why should anyone listening or watching this episode, why should they be thinking about adopting RevOps as a go-to-market strategy, or as we say, as a competitive advantage?
Yeah. And really, we kind of mentioned a key component is that customer experience, and improving that customer experience, not only laying the foundation for that to meet their expectations throughout their buyer's journey and beyond, even after they become customers, but to constantly innovate with that customer experience. The flip side of the coin, which is extremely important today, is keeping your employees happy. The employee satisfaction of having efficiencies in the day-to-day operations, having redundant manual tasks automated, not having to enter data or do a process in 3 or 4 or 5 different systems. All of those things affect the employee on a day-to-day basis. So if you can get them laser focused on what they're talented at. If it's a creative in marketing, or if it's a salesperson who's really a great closer, if it's that customer success person who really establishes those relationships with your customers, let them do that. There's technology and platforms in place to automate the day-to-day activities that employees, quite frankly, don't want to do anymore. They don't consider that valuable work in their job. And it's really competitive out there for top talent. It's extremely competitive. So you need to be conscious of that employee experience as well as the customer experience. And then from an operational standpoint, when you're looking at profitability, scalability, growth, you need to be efficient, right? Your operations need to be a fine-tuned machine, as they say. And that's a real important factor of the revenue operations framework as a whole.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of things there that, of course, are probably series of episodes just on their own. But, so again, one of the themes that I've heard, not only as we've been doing, RevOps Champions, but just in conversations we're having every week with business leaders who talk about, what makes those businesses and organizations successful. It always seems to come down, and I like to just level set this because, stating the obvious sometimes is necessary, which is every business succeeds because of two things, right? So number one is they have great people, and with those great people, they get great customers. And essentially that's what every business needs to do. We're obviously moving a little beyond that, and that's now, okay, you've figured out, your vision, your strategy, et cetera. You know who your ideal customers are. You have your A team in place. Now what do you do to differentiate and have a competitive advantage?
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's a good reminder because we can get caught deep diving in the weeds too. And if we don't pull back and say, okay, do we have great people and great customers, then, there might be other issues there.
Right.
So no, it's a great point.
Yeah. And of course, on that note, especially right now, if you do have great people, again, those people, when they go home, assuming they're not already working from home, once they switch off and take off their work hat, they are consumers. They're online learning, buying things, etc. They know what they expect as consumers.
Right.
If they're not able to offer that in their job, if they're not able to offer that same experience to their customers, that becomes frustrating.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Which is why, again, and they because of all the uncertainty, especially in the last 2 years, the last thing you want to add to any employee is more uncertainty, because they're not aligned with the team next door. Their technology is not aligned. They don't have clear handoffs with the data, which is typically the goals that they are working towards are not clear. So again, it's back to that alignment piece. If you have alignment across your people, processes, data, and technology, you're going to have happier employees, and of course, if you have happier employees, you're going to have happy customers.
Right. Fantastic.
Yeah. So, of course, but I've used this analogy multiple times. We moved from the Stone Age to the Iron Age, not because we ran out of stones, but we just figured that iron was going to do things, better. Yeah. And again, I want to preface, everything we talk about here in the same way, right? So the reason we're putting it out there that folks should maybe check out, revenue operations or RevOps as a new go-to-market strategy or model is not because, what they're using is necessarily, there's none of it left, but maybe there is a better way because of all the things that we're talking about that make businesses successful. And how we developed, going back to the workshop from 3 years ago, where we had this incredible feedback from like 120 people saying, can you tell us more? Because this all, makes a lot of sense.
Right.
The reason we come up with new solutions is because there are challenges,
Right.
in businesses, but often folks don't really know what's at the root cause of these challenges. So what is one challenge or some challenges that you can think of that we've solved either for ourselves at Denamico or for some clients that we can talk a little bit more about now today?
Yeah, we think about the challenges around scaling a business, and you can do that in various ways. Traditionally, if you wanted to grow your business and things were going well, what do? You hire another salesperson, right? You start building that team. You have them go out
all the time. Yeah.
to bring in revenue. I worked with a client for several years, still a client of Denamico, and a smaller business, but with aggressive growth goals. And rather than doubling down and hiring people in sales, we looked at the business's website and use of automation to eliminate some of the manual steps that were happening in the sales process.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to allow the customers to come to the website and do a lot of the steps that they would do to get a quote for that particular product without even having to talk to a salesperson.
Right.
And we walk them through 80% of that sales process until the point when they're ready to purchase. It is extremely easy for them, that salesperson, to pick up the phone, to have a meeting that's already been scheduled and just finalize the sale, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't possible prior to having that, ability on the website and then the automation behind the scenes. And we were able to effectively scale and grow this business year over year without having to add that full sales team. Well, eventually they had to, right?
Sure,
because it really grew. But they were able to get a better return on their investment versus hiring another person, which is expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that we are taking away someone's job.
No.
If they went and hired a salesperson, they would still have that broken customer experience,
right?
Where somebody wants to walk themselves through that process versus having a salesperson reaching out at the wrong time. So I just kind of wanted to address that in terms of the technology in place.
Yeah. Well, and I think, one of the other things that happens in a situation like that, when we create a solution like that, is the prospects or the customers who are willing to do the extra work of completing all the things, on these forms on the website, shows that they are a serious buyer.
Right.
So you don't have the salespeople, spending time on the phone or having to, if it's a B2C type business, having to go to someone's home or if even someone's, workplace to find out more if they're really not a serious buyer. By having this automated first part of the sales process, if that person is doing all their homework, again, in their own time without requiring any time from a salesperson, and they're going through all those steps, their intent to buy is very high. So
Absolutely.
Just again, the sales cycle is just shortened, which again is a very big goal for a lot of companies.
Right. If you can get your customers to self-qualify, that's a competitive advantage, right?
Right. Yeah. That's a great example. And of course, that's really what we do. We're a team of problem solvers, here at Denamico, and I guess that's one example of some of the challenges that we've fixed. And of course, one of the things that we like to do here too is, is try these things out for ourselves first, right? And make sure we know how to find a solution for this problem. And then of course we go back to our clients and say, oh, by the way,
right,
we've seen this work for us, or for one or two other clients, we think it might be worth trying, in your business.
Yep.
So, and then one of the other things we know, sort of going back to where we started here today, was, this evolution to where we are today and trying to create this, or being part of it, really creating the playbook for RevOps. This didn't just come out of nowhere in the last couple of years. This is just part of the evolution that we were talking about earlier of again, that symbiotic relationship between technology and the impact on buyer behavior and vice versa. And solving, the challenges that come about from because of those changes in technology. And in fact, we saw yesterday again, so the ecosystem, of course, that we spend a lot of time in is the HubSpot ecosystem, where they, announced yesterday that they now have over 1,000 apps, software that we're able to integrate with HubSpot. So, which of course is, I think, again, another good reminder of something we don't necessarily talk about a lot, which is, people know us as a HubSpot solutions partner, but they don't realize that what that means is that we're experts at integrating HubSpot with whatever tools you're using. So if you have a different CRM, if you have different marketing automation, if you have all these different point solutions that make up those 1,000 plus apps, and there will continue to be more, that is a big part of solving not only the point solutions, but you're trying to create that integrated platform, which of course is what we love about what HubSpot is doing, because they're really one of the few, as far as we're concerned, for the size businesses that we like to work with, so the 25 million to $1 billion businesses, there really aren't a lot of options that have the same ability to integrate everything onto one platform where you have that aligned, seamless experience for both the employees and the customers.
Right. And then, Brendon, we were talking about this yesterday, just in a brief conversation of why there are so many different types of software solutions out there. Chief Martech comes out with their visuals, and it's expanding year after year after year. I think, it's 10,000 plus in Martech, which includes sales and marketing systems. But you made a good point in terms of that. In the past, marketing teams, sales teams, customer success teams are using these point solutions to solve for a very specific use case in isolation. And so teams just start bringing in all these different solutions without thinking about across the business if the functionality can be shared, or if data can be passed back and forth, or if there are processes in place that would help them implement the technology and use the technology collectively, share that data, make more informed decisions moving forward, and really start growing as a team versus continuing to work in those silos, which traditionally worked in the past. But the speed of business has changed. We always say, the pace of business now is so fast, and you just have to continually evolve. And that HubSpot started as a point solution as well. I mean, they were clearly in the marketing space, automation, email. They recognized that, that's just one facet of what a holistic platform tied to a CRM can do. We're biased, but that's why we love HubSpot is they're continually evolving, because we need to continually improvise and innovate the solutions that we're providing for our clients, who are ultimately end users of HubSpot. So our services have kind of been in parallel with the evolution of HubSpot, not because the functionality became available, but because we were seeing our clients had different challenges, and that we had to provide these solutions as well. So
Yeah.
that's been the fun part of the journey.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I keep having flashbacks to that workshop in 2019 where, you and Emily essentially created this workbook with what we knew at that point.
Yeah.
On like, how do you figure out what you could be improving and where the problems might be. And, one of the challenges with these point solutions and maybe a great question that people should be asking, if let's just say whether they're in marketing or sales or customer service or some sort of other, support ops role, if they're considering, another shiny object or point solution, for the lack of a better word, maybe the first question they should be asking themselves is, if we implement this point solution, what is going to be the impact on the employee experience and or the customer experience?
Right.
Because I think that is one very quick way, for them to say, to realize that in fact, if all they're trying to do is help what they think is helping themselves, it might not be a good holistic solution.
Right.
But anyway, we'll get more into that, because one of the things, that we were talking about recently too, is that with anything that's new and evolving, the most frustrating thing, the uncertainty of not knowing what you don't know, and which of course then leads to, where do you start? And I know you've done a lot of work in this area in the last year too, as we've realized that is the most common thing that we see when businesses have said, okay, fine, yeah, we know we have a problem or a series of problems or symptoms of things, but we just cannot figure out, where do we start the fix?
Yeah, it's overwhelming when you start thinking about your business, not in terms of, well, we have sales over here, we've got marketing over here. When you start thinking more holistic in terms of, what's going to improve that customer experience, what's going to bring in more revenue, provide more opportunity, get you in the marketplace more, it can be intimidating on where to start. And especially how do you prioritize some of the issues and or opportunities? It's not always negative. I mean, it could just be an opportunity that you need to go after. And so we've really been diving into that, since that workshop and in conversations internally and with clients. And it's really turned into conversations of what I like to call the areas of impact. And I've developed with the help of the team, a revenue operations flywheel, so to speak. And it has these 8 different areas of impact. We won't go into each one, but it hits on your website, your CRM, your tech integrations. It hits on data and reporting, as well as customer success, sales enablement, all these different areas that you can consider within your business and identify things that either are working well or are not working well. Right. And what we've done is we've turned that into an actual tool, shameless plug, RevOpsScore.com, but it's a way for businesses to go and fill out a series of questions in these 8 areas of impact and get immediate feedback based on how they rate themselves in those areas. You get some takeaways, you get clickable resources to go a bit deeper in those areas, but you also get a tangible score so that you can compare that with other members of your team, because everyone's going to have a different perspective based on their roles. Right. You might score differently in terms of process or data and reporting than I would. Right. And that's not a bad thing. What it does is it helps bring people together and start having those conversations. Well, why did you score it that way? Right. Oh, I didn't even realize that you were missing those reports that you need at the leadership level to see how the business is running. Let's have conversations of how we can automate those reports for you. So,
right.
Yeah, it's a great way to start the conversation, to identify issues and opportunities, and then to really think about prioritizing what's really going to have a great impact on not only what we've been hammering, the customer experience, but that operational efficiency internally as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to fix anything until you've really identified, what the problem is. Right. We often, use the doctor type analogy where, until you've actually identified what the issue is, you won't even know what kind of doctor to go and see. Right. It's very similar. And one of the things that I know we started seeing already 3 years ago in that workshop was one of the questions that you and Emily had created for the workshop was how many different, so, again, as a takeaway, which was probably the very beginning of RevOps Score, which was, how many different pieces of software do you currently use, across sales and marketing, for example?
Yep. Yeah.
And knowing that what so many businesses still do, and which is what leads to the success of many of these point solutions, at least in the beginning, is that people think that they can solve the issue with a piece of software.
Right.
And of course, what we realized, especially as more, just in the last 3 years, to your point, the number of point solutions in apps and software has tripled or quadrupled in most areas. So, you're forever just trying to band-aid whatever you think the problem is with a new piece of software. And in fact, sort of ironically, the technology of the software has actually exacerbated the issue in many cases, right. Which is why you've got to, take this step back, and the technology is really the last part that you fix. And as part of that, of course, you're going to be getting rid of a bunch of software, and there's savings in software costs and what have you when you do that. But that is one of the last things you do, because you first have to figure out, what are your goals? In other words, what is the data that you need? What are the processes? What are the handoffs look like between these teams? And then you create a system using the technology that you have available to you to build that solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then get rid of everything else.
Yeah, I love it, Brendon, because it reminds me of having like a messy garage that's full of tools.
Go there.
That's full of tools, right? But when we're talking with clients and we run them through a tech stack audit of what you're describing, it's pretty eye-opening as to how many apps, pieces of software that teams are using or not, and they're still paying for, or that there's crossover in functionality that could eliminate a few different pieces of software. And all of those things take mind share away from,
or as we say, they create friction. That's one of the things that creates friction between the people, the processes, etc.
Yeah. And so going back to my messy garage, I have plenty of tools in there that I haven't even used. So I'm like questioning, why am I just storing these?
Right.
Like what are the 5 or 6 main tools that I really need to have to be efficient in what I'm trying to do for a certain project. So
yeah. Well, but I mean, at least my local Ace Hardware loves me because I've done the same thing where I've gone and I need to fix something once. I go buy that tool to fix that thing, and I never use it again. And as you say, it just sits in the corner of the garage until that day that never comes when I need it again.
Right.
Great. So I guess we could talk about a lot of things, and I definitely like that idea of doing this again and talking about different things. So I think let's wrap here for today, Adam. And with that, what I like to do is ask you to share one tip that you have for the folks watching and listening as to how they can improve, what they're doing here in 2022 when it comes to their sales, marketing, and customer service operations, or as we call RevOps.
Right. I would go back to kind of where we started with alignment and how we framed up this conversation, and to really assess the alignment of your teams, of your technology, of your data, and of your processes. And this is going back to the workshop too. And you can do that just by simply looking at those 4 buckets. You can always check out RevOpsScore.com and use that tool to start the assessment and get started. But really take a look at your sales, marketing, and customer success teams. Bring leaders and other people from those teams together and just say, are we aligned in these areas or are we not? And get the different perspectives from those teams and start those conversations. Mm-hmm. And to your point, don't think about it in terms of what we're going to do is just implement new technology. It's not as simple as that. That's one key component. But think higher level in terms of the processes that are in place, and if you're being efficient, and if you're creating a great customer experience, if your employees are in fact happy with doing the work that they're doing because they don't have to focus on manual repetitive tasks, then really that sets the stage for conversations around technology, which is where we kind of geek out and where we're looking at the, not only revenue operations, but what's the rev tech that is supporting this drive of revenue operations.
Right. Yeah. What is the technology stack that supports your revenue team?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, as we've been digging into this, over the last few years, I think the one thing that's become very clear to me, and it's almost like for me, the 2 bookends of this whole process are number one is what are your business goals for a given period. Again, most people would probably use a year. You could go 3 years or 5 years, and if you've done a good job with those, maybe you want to look at 90 days. But 90 days is typically too short for the kind of stuff that we're talking about. But let's just say a year. What are the business goals for the next year? And as we're still sort of early in 2022, let's just say for 2022, what are your business goals? And then how do sales, marketing, and customer service, what are going to be their KPIs that support the overall business goals? And then where do we feel there's friction or gaps between those teams, or in those teams when it comes to their processes? Assuming, again, if you figure out the KPIs, then you might already have the data component figured out. So then, is there a process issue that you can figure out? And then once you've got all that figured out, you've got your processes figured out, you've got your teams aligned and speaking to each other, and they all know what they need to do, then you can start getting into the technology piece of it, which is, so what is the technology that we currently have, that we're currently using, and then where is the friction, where are the sticking points, right? Where are the 3 tools that we have that actually do the same thing, where we can get rid of 2 and just keep 1 or whatever. So you have, again, the bookends are the business goals, in this case for the year, and on the other end you have the technology that's going to support your data and your processes to get to those business goals over that time.
That's well stated, Brendon. You've been talking to some smart people in these episodes, I can tell.
Yeah, I must say I'm loving it, and again, as I've shared with you and a few others on the team, and also my guests, is that one of the biggest benefits for me of doing RevOps Champions, the podcast, has been, the best way to to learn, is to teach. So again, we're myself and you today, and typically myself and whoever the guest is, we're sharing what we've learned, but we're learning so much in the process, which is a great way to learn.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on today and being a part of RevOps Champions. And I look forward to seeing how the podcast evolves and any upcoming guests that you have.
Yeah, great to have you, Adam. Keep up the awesome work.
All right. Thanks, Brendon.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you for checking out this episode of RevOps Champions. This show is powered by Denamico, a HubSpot consulting firm, helping businesses level up the technology systems that power their ability to scale. If you enjoyed what you learned in this episode, make sure to follow RevOps Champions wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or visit RevOpsChampions.com to get immediate access to all of the latest episodes.